I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with Young Woman and the Sea screenwriter Jeff Nathanson. Jeff, my first question to you about this film and what it really, what it represented and what it meant to me is, why do you think we love underdog stories so much? What is it about the underdog that elicits such strong emotional connections to a character?
I mean, that was my way into this thing. So, I'm a product of the 70s. I grew up with Rocky, Bad News Bears, Longest Yard, Slapshot, Chariots of Fire. It goes on and on and on. And so, part of what I remembered is walking out of the theater when I was younger, I won't say when, and feeling that incredible euphoria you felt when you saw one of those films and one of those characters. And so for me, that's why I did this movie. I was literally sitting home one night, with my two girls back 8 years ago, and I just couldn't find a movie that really would speak to them in that way that I remembered as a kid. So I went out and I was lucky enough to find it.
Yeah, there's just something about a film in which we're following this journey of a character who, is doing something really different, exciting, unusual, and against the odds. It just gets to that very visceral gut reaction where we just want that person to succeed.
And it's
It's
true.
aspirational, right? Is it aspirational, do you think? Is that the reason why we love stories like this one?
I think so. I think you put yourself there. I think in this case, especially because it's true, because of the era in which she's doing it, because of the odds that are stacked against her. You're talking about a time when women are not even taught to swim. And so her doing this, even thinking of doing it, is so insane for the period. And to accomplish it is literally impossible. And so I think that you can't help but not sort of get caught up in it, and just feel in yourself. I remember, like I brought up Rocky. How many people would go outside and start running, with the song in their head? You just couldn't help it. People running up the stairs in Philadelphia. And so you just can't help it. You have that reaction that you love it so much that you want to stand up. And I remember at our first test screenings, that's what I felt like. I remember watching the audience have that moment, and it was just amazing. I just loved it so much.
Because many of us know the story, or at least have heard about it, all can guess where it's headed. And so you've got a really interesting challenge as the writer to make it as compelling as possible and give us some doubt. And then when we get the payoff at the end, it's just like, I mean, it's euphoric. It's amazing. Is that a very difficult thread to weave so that you're keeping the audience engaged and on the edge of their seat, knowing that she's probably going to get what she wants at the end, but we still
Yeah.
want to see it happen.
There's so many examples of this where I've walked in the theater, Apollo 13, where I know they make it, but it doesn't matter. You get so caught up, and the obstacles are so original and unique, and you could have never guessed that her own coach would have poisoned her, and these things that were historical fact. So I wasn't too concerned. I was a little concerned in terms of getting people to make the film, because that was one of the first things that always came up, and you'd have to fight that. Um, but the other part of it was, once we had Daisy and I saw what she was doing, I knew that people would lean in and go. I just felt it in my bones that she was just so beautiful in the film, and you can't help not engage. And so you just wanted her to make it so badly that it's just one of those things where you can't really, until I saw Daisy, I didn't really know if it would work, and then I knew.
Isn't it interesting how casting is so critical to the success of a film? I can't
Mm.
really imagine what this film would have been like without Daisy at the helm,
Yeah.
and playing this character. And I agree with you. Like, there's something about her, and particularly this performance, that really resonated with me.
Yeah.
Can you pinpoint something necessarily that you've discovered about Daisy after all this time on this film, and what was it about a performance that you think really made the film fly?
Well, first of all, just the fact that she did it, that she really got in the water, and that she was able to have the courage to jump in the Black Sea, at a time, this is, winter was still there, it was right at the tail end of winter. I mean, it was insane. I would go dip my toe in the water every day and think, "Oh, okay, I can't have a reaction on my face because she's actually going in." So there was just that. And then it was just her commitment to training and all that part of it. All of that aside, what she brought, just the pure innocence and a complete she just completely shred every piece of Daisy that I had seen before. And so I just thought that it was I just was, there's not a lot of dialogue in the film. It's not like it's long speeches, but what she does and the way she does it and just the pure strength that she exudes throughout each scene and even in the water with looks and things, I just thought I would sit there behind the monitor and just be in awe. So I give her so much credit. And what Yoakum brought out of all the actors, I thought he did a wonderful job, with them.
Absolutely. Daisy she's really good at the non-verbal cues. I mean, just thinking back to when I first saw her in Star Wars: The Force Awakens, I was reminded of that when watching this film again. I had the power of the way in which she's able to imbue a character without much dialogue. Fascinating. Let's move
Yeah.
on because there's so much I want to raise with you. The key touchstones of a really good sports drama, if you want to call it that, is how you employ certain elements without veering too far into tropes and cliche. Was that a challenge as well when you were putting this story together?
I really didn't view it as a challenge because I was trying to make an old-fashioned sports film in every way. I wanted it to be that. And so I just wanted it to be a really good one. So I knew there were going to be beats and coaches and different things that kind of we've seen before. I just felt like we were going to do it in a way maybe that you haven't seen or felt in a long time. So I wasn't too concerned. I was also never really in my head writing a sports film. I didn't think of it that way. I kind of viewed it more as a prison escape film. And so I just sort of, once I figured out the character and stuff, I kind of just approached it in a different way as the channel was this prison that she had to get out of and it was an impossibility and how would she do that? So I try not to think about it too much because if you really think about it and if you put every sports film, you can kind of every scene you can say, well, I saw that and that and that, you kind of get into that. And it's a dangerous way to write. So I would put it out of my head.
That's probably smart. Yeah, you're writing a good story um and you're trying to find the truth. That prison escape angle is so interesting to me. I never really occurred to me, but that really works for me actually. Because just
Okay.
being in that water, I felt so immersed in it as well. I felt really uncomfortable. Um, I felt really suffocated, even though we're in this vastness of the sea. There was so much going on in my head, which is why I desperately wanted her to succeed. And I think that's probably, to me, that's the real success of particularly the latter half of the film.
Yeah.
You wrote the film, you know it intimately. When you first even watched it, were you having any of those visceral reactions?
I do every time I see it. I still do. I mean, I can't help, especially, there's things about it that are personal to me. It's very much a family film and the relationship between the sisters and the mother and all these things. And there's pieces of my life and things and that are spread throughout the film. And so to have something that's in your head, to then have it get made with Daisy and these actors, with Yoakum's direction, with that score, to have Jerry and his involvement and all the wonderful things that he brought to it, and he did so much. So I can't help but not get caught up in it and to celebrate it every time I see it.
Well, speaking of Jerry Bruckheimer as producer, um, it the film boasts his imprimatur as a seasoned filmmaker. What did he really bring to the table as producer on this film?
Well, the movie doesn't get made without Jerry. This is even with Jerry, it's a 7-year, 8-year journey. So this is not an easy movie to get made. It's period. It's about 19-year-old girl in 1926 who swims the English Channel. This is not exactly a slam dunk for most studios. And the truth is, we had to jump through a lot of hoops to get it done. And Jerry is able to thread that needle in ways and to bring people together in ways that just are remarkable. He's it's a wonder to watch. And the areas of the film, first of all, like I said, Disney came to us and said, go ahead and make the movie for this amount of money if you can do it. There was no way to do it. And it was Jerry and Chad Oman who said, we're going to go to Bulgaria and we're going to do it. I thought they were
Wow.
joking, of course. But I was like, well, the movie is set in New York and, the English Channel and France. Yeah, Bulgaria makes a lot of sense. So we went to Bulgaria, and they were right. And so, and I can remember getting to Bulgaria, and it's like a 75-hour journey, and you get there. And I
Yeah.
remember walking in, and there's Jerry. He had got there before I did. And so I just thought that's what a producer is. Like, he's the captain of the ship in every way.
Yeah, a seasoned pro who has your back, yeah. And so you get to Sofia in Bulgaria, and then of course you're filming. They're filming on the Black Sea. I can't even imagine how challenging that is to be in a other part of the world that you've never been to before. But during the making of the film, do you recall anything in particular that really gave you a light bulb moment that something special was being created here?
Really at the first read-throughs when I saw Tilda and Daisy, the sister, that was reading with her, I started to get a sense that this was going to work. And then when Jeanette came in, the mom, and she started to read with them, I started to feel like, okay, maybe there's something here. And then watching Yoakum is such a master when it comes to, he did Kentucky on the water. And that was my big fear. He's the one who said, I'm going to shoot this on the water and we're going to go out there. And I thought that's insane. But watching the way he worked, both on land, but really at sea as well, it was really, I started to very early on know that there were things that Daisy was doing that I've been around a while. I started to pay attention, that I knew there was something special going on.
It must be a very good feeling to finally get to that point after all that work and realize this is actually happening and it could be really good.
Yeah.
Um, so you touched on this earlier, but the quintessential sports drama usually ties together elements of perseverance and triumph against the odds. So that's a tale as old as time, right? But this story really stands out because the film, well, the heroine, is up against assumed gender roles from the 1920s. Was that a really key element for you, given that you've mentioned you have two daughters? I have a daughter as well. I know exactly what you're probably about to say, how important it is to really spotlight that, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's the first chapter of the book. So, Gwen Stout wrote a great book. First chapter of the book is the Slocum ferry disaster in New York City in the early part of the century. And, almost 1,000 people died, and most of them were women, and most of them died because they couldn't swim like 20 yards to shore. And so, there was something, I read that first chapter. I wasn't expecting that at all when I picked up the book. I just wasn't thinking like that something could move me like that. I really stopped reading because I just thought, wait a minute, this is totally not what I thought I was getting myself into here. And it just struck me immediately that I had not seen that story. I didn't even understand that story. And so from that moment on, that's all this was to me, is to make sure that that story got told and in a very realistic way. It's not meant to be a mustache twirling kind of movie, but this was just the reality of the roles and the gender roles of that time. And somebody had to break them. And I think that Trudy played a big role in that. And when I first saw the footage of the parade in New York, the real footage, I had the same reaction as I did when I read that chapter. I thought, oh my God, if you look at these two events and they're not that far apart, it's mind-boggling. It's absolutely mind-boggling. And so what this kid did, I give her all the credit, but it's an amazing thing. So I was kind of bought in from the beginning, and I knew that we had that, and I knew you had to be careful and how much of that you played, but you couldn't not have it be part of almost every scene because it was part of the fabric of that moment.
Absolutely. And the thing is, it seems obvious to me now as we talk about it, but it's not something that I think about very often. And in fact, I probably wasn't really even aware of what gender roles were like back then. And it's only 100 years ago. You know, it's the early 20th century, and it's so interesting how times have obviously changed so much, and yet have they? Because we still talk about representation, we still talk about gender roles to this day. So it's fascinating that you're able to make a film like this. My final question, though, Jeff, is more about you're able to ground the story into the more intimate, more internal moments that Trudy is experiencing on this journey. And I just wonder, as a writer, when you're writing about a character's inner thoughts and feelings, does a lot of that come from personal experience, or are you really just adapting from a book that you've read and you try to keep your own personal perspective out of it?
No, you definitely, if you love your character, and I don't think you should write something if you don't love your character. And I really love Trudy, and from the moment I read the book, there's no interviews with her really. There's not a lot of stuff. Her voice isn't in your head because there's not a lot of, so it was a lot of just figuring out for myself what she could have been like from the little bits that I had and piecing that together and then figuring out the details. Because for me, it's all the details. It's all the little things that, the tiniest of things that mattered to me. And figuring out how to put those details in the huge expanse of this really kind of epic story. So when I think of the film, I always think of tiny little bits of it. I don't always think about her, crossing and touching the sand. I just don't. And so like I said, I think that sometimes as a writer, you dive into these things and you're absolutely immersed and you can get caught up in it if you forget, like, it's all the little things that really are going to get you there. And so for that script, I think people really responded to the period, the details, and just who she was, her inner soul, which I think came through. And luckily, Daisy was able to find it.
Absolutely. Jeff, congratulations on some beautiful work, and thank you again for your time today.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.